The sun hung low over the rolling hills of Willow Creek, Tennessee, casting a golden haze across my 5 acres of inherited land. It was a quiet evening, the kind where cicadas hum and the air smells of fresh-cut grass. But beneath that calm, trouble was brewing. I felt it in my bones, the way you do when you've lived long enough to know peace never lasts. My name is Thomas Grayson, a man of 55, stubborn as the oaks that line my property, and I've never bent to anyone's rules but my own. That's why the Willow Creek Homeowners Association hated me. And their president, Clara Hensley, hated me most of all. This land wasn't just dirt and grass. It was blood, sweat, and memory, passed down from my grandfather, a Korean War veteran who built the house I live in with his own calloused hands. He taught me to honor what's yours, to protect it, and to never let anyone tell you how to live on your soil. Alongside me were my 12-year-old son, Jacob, and my boar, Brutus, a 380-pound beast bred in the wild, trained to my voice and loyal as the day is long. Brutus wasn't a pet. He was family, with eyes sharper than most men I've met and a heart that only struck when I told it to. Clara Hensley, though, saw Brutus as a threat. She saw my whole life as a threat. For years, the HOA had hounded me. Fines in my mailbox, letters demanding I paint my barn some bland color, or tear down the old hog fence that had stood since my grandfather's day. I ignored them. My land, my rules. But Clara, with her manicured nails and her pearl earrings, took it personally. She'd stand at my gate, her voice dripping with venom, threatening to call animal control and have Brutus hauled away. That monster doesn't belong in a civilized neighborhood, she'd say, her sunglasses glinting like knives. I'd point to the sign on my gate, private property. Boar Patrol. Trespassers may be trampled. She'd laugh, but Brutus didn't. He waited. It started small like it always does. Shadows moving past the tree lean. Figures too polished for the woods. One afternoon, I caught Clara standing just outside my fence, her phone raised, snapping pictures of Brutus as he lay under the shade of an oak. "This pig's a lawsuit waiting to happen," she called out, loud enough for me to hear. I walked to the fence, slow and calm. "You here to admire him, or just fishing for trouble?" I asked. Her smile was tight, venomous. "I'm here because that beast is a liability. One day, someone's going to get hurt, and I'll make sure you pay for it." I pointed to the sign again. "Stay out," I said. "That's the only rule you need to know." She laughed and walked away, but her smile said this wasn't over. Then came the day she crossed the line. Jacob was kicking a soccer ball near the chicken coop, his laughter echoing across the yard. I stepped inside for a quick call. 2 minutes, no more. But 2 minutes was all Clara needed. When I reached the porch, I saw my boy face down in the dirt, covered in pig slop. Rotten, slimy, dripping from his hair, his ears, his mouth. He gagged, trying to spit it out, his hands clawing at the mess. Clara stood over him, holding an empty bucket, her heel planted on his back. Not hard enough to break him, but enough to make him cry. Enough to make my blood boil. "You want to play near that pig?" she sneered. "Then we're what it eats." Jacob tried to crawl away, shaking, but she kicked his hand aside. "Don't touch what you can't clean, you little mutt." She looked down at my son, smiling like she'd won something. "This HOA has rules," she whispered. "Your daddy thinks he's above them, but out here, trash raises trash." My hands clenched the doorframe. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I just watched, rage burning behind my teeth. Clara wasn't done. Her eyes locked on Brutus, still lying in his pen, unaware of the hell she'd unleashed. From her handbag, she pulled a canister of pepper spray, military grade, sleek and cruel. I cracked the screen door open, just enough for it to creak. She froze, glanced back. "Just doing a safety check," she said, her voice smug. "Wouldn't want that beast getting too comfortable." Before I could move, she sprayed. A full blast through the wire fence, straight into Brutus's face. He shrieked, a sound of pure, feral pain. He thrashed backward, crashing into the post of his pen, his tusks scraping wood. Blood and mucus streamed from his eyes. Jacob, still in the dirt, screamed, "No." "Stop." Clara didn't. She emptied the canister in long, sweeping arcs across Brutus's face and body, then tossed it into the mud. The boar collapsed, his legs shaking, a low, guttural moan crawling from his throat. Clara adjusted her blouse, wiped her hands with a tissue, and muttered, "Problem solved." She turned and saw me on the porch, hands clenched, eyes locked on her. She smirked. "You should have put it down when you had the chance," she said. "And don't bother calling anyone. No one's going to side with a pig farmer over me." I didn't answer. I walked to the gate of the pen, my boots sinking into the soil. I knelt beside Brutus. His eyes were bloodshot, foam clinging to his lips. But when I touched his side, he leaned into me like he knew what came next. I stood, unlatched the gate, and whispered one word: "Charge." The gate creaked open. Brutus didn't rush out like some rabid beast. He stepped forward, slow and blind, steam rising off his skin. Each breath was a growl. His tusks were streaked with blood and dust. Clara stood a few feet away, arms crossed, brows raised. "What do you think you're doing?" she asked. "You're going to unleash that thing on me." I didn't answer. I stepped back, calm and steady. Brutus walked past me, a freight train without brakes. Clara laughed. "This is your plan? You're going to sick a farm animal on a woman? You'll go to jail, you idiot." She turned to walk away, her heels clicking on my patio stones. "And for the record," she called back, "I hope that pig dies screaming, just like your son will when I report you to child services." My fist curled. Jacob whimpered behind me. Brutus stopped. His ears twitched. He turned toward her voice, and he started walking. Brutus moved with a purpose that silenced the world around him. Each step left a crater in the dirt, each breath a hiss of pain and rage. Clara Hensley, still oblivious to the storm she'd unleashed, took 2 steps toward the HOA's manicured walking trail, her heels clicking with the arrogance of someone who thought she'd already won. But then she stopped. Something in the air shifted, a weight, a presence. She turned, saw Brutus walking toward her, bloodshot eyes unseeing but locked on her scent, and laughed again. "Are you serious?" she barked. "You're letting that filthy thing chase me now." I stood by the open gate, my face a mask of calm, though my heart pounded like a war drum. Jacob, still trembling in the dirt, clutched the towel I'd thrown over his shoulders, his eyes wide with fear and something else, hope. Clara waved her arm toward the street, as if expecting the neighbors to rush to her defense. "I hope someone's recording this," she shouted. "I hope the cops drag you away in cuffs." I glanced to my left. 3 neighbors stood behind their fences, silent. One held a phone, recording. Another, old Mrs. Carter, was smiling faintly. Clara didn't notice. Brutus picked up speed. No sound from him, just the steady rhythm of hooves and the rasp of his burned lungs. Clara turned fully now, hands on her hips, her voice sharp as a whip. "Call him off right now. You don't scare me. That thing's half blind and wallowing in mud." She pointed at me, her finger trembling slightly. "One more step, and I'll sue you for every penny you don't have." I said nothing. Brutus charged, not wild, not flailing, but a straight line of raw, deliberate fury. Clara's bravado cracked. Her eyes widened as she stumbled backward. "Wait. No. Get back." Too late. The first hit wasn't even the worst. Brutus's shoulder slammed into her hip, sending her flying sideways into my compost bin. Plastic shattered, and a spray of rotten cabbage, eggshells, and coffee grounds erupted into the air. Clara screamed. Not from pain, not yet, but from the humiliation of it all. Her pristine white blouse was soaked in brown sludge, one high heel flying clean off her foot. She landed in a heap, her pearl earrings glinting in the mess. "You psycho!" she shrieked, clawing at the ground. "You absolute!" Her words cut off as Brutus turned, head lowered, tusks forward. He didn't need eyes to find her. He could smell her perfume, her cruelty, her fear. The second hit came from behind. Brutus clipped her legs, knocking them out from under her. She dropped like a rag doll, landing hard on her back with a thud that echoed across the yard. The neighbors gasped, but no one moved. Clara writhed, coughing, trying to crawl away, half buried in compost and broken pride. "Help me," she screamed. "Somebody help me. He's got a killer pig." No one came. Brutus circled, his breath hot and thick, his tusks streaked with red. Clara tried to crawl toward the HOA path, but Brutus stepped in front of her, blocking the way. "Please," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "I didn't mean to hurt it. I was just enforcing the rules." She looked up at me, eyes wild, mascara streaking down her face. "You're going to let this happen? Are you out of your mind?" I said nothing. This wasn't about me letting anything happen. This was justice correcting itself. Clara had poured slop on my son's head, pressed her heel into his back, and blinded my boar for no reason but her spite. She thought her title, her rules, and her HOA sash gave her the right to hurt whoever she wanted. But she was wrong. And Brutus was here to show her how wrong. She screamed again, but it was different now. Raw, primal, the kind of terror that comes when you realize no one's coming to save you. Brutus stepped over her, his massive form casting a shadow that swallowed her whole. His eyes were ruined, but his ears twitched with her every whimper. His nose followed the stench of her privilege. Clara clawed at the grass, dragging herself backward. "This is assault," she cried. "You'll go to prison. I'm the head of the HOA." Brutus let out a deep, bone-rattling snort. It silenced everything. No birds, no wind, not even the hum of the cicadas. Even Jacob stopped crying from the porch. The world held its breath. Then Brutus charged. The impact was ugly, unyielding. His tusks caught her side, lifting her halfway off the ground before tossing her into the flagpole by the garden. The metal rang like a church bell. Clara crumpled, her blouse torn, her pearls scattered like broken teeth across the lawn. Blood bloomed across her skirt. She tried to stand, but one leg twisted the wrong way. Her hip was broken. "Help me, you psychotic hillbilly," she screamed. "You can't get away with this." Brutus pawed the dirt, hoof after hoof, slow and purposeful. His chest rose and fell like an engine. Clara held up a trembling hand. "Stop. I am sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." But the words came too late, and no one believed them. The neighbors stood behind their fences, watching, recording. Not one lifted a hand. Clara saw them. "You're letting this happen to me?" she cried. "I'm your president. I protected you." No one replied. Brutus reared up, two hooves in the air, towering over her like a statue carved for vengeance. Clara's final scream was half prayer, half choke. When he came down, he didn't aim to kill. His hooves hit just beside her chest, cracking the wooden base of the flagpole and sending splinters flying. The ground seemed to collapse beneath her. Clara didn't move. Blood smeared her face, one shoe gone, her lip busted, her eyes swelling shut. Her voice was silenced. But Brutus didn't finish her. He could have, but he didn't. What he left her with was worse. He stepped back, standing over her, breathing, waiting. I walked over, slow and calm, and looked down at the woman who tried to destroy everything I held dear. She tried to speak, but only blood came out. I crouched beside her. "You ruled with threats, with fake laws, with cruelty," I said softly. "But on my land, we answer to something older than your paperwork." I stood, looking at the crowd behind the fence. This is what happens when you hurt the wrong child and blind the wrong animal. Brutus turned away, his bloodied tusks catching the fading light, and walked back to his pen. The king, no longer in exile. The sirens came slowly, too late for Clara's screams, too late for her threats, but right on time for the silence. She lay sprawled in the dirt, her HOA sash soaked in mud and blood, her pride shattered. She wasn't unconscious. She was awake, trapped in a body that finally understood defeat. Brutus slumped under the oak tree, his chest heaving, his blistered eyes blinking once before closing. The neighbors hadn't moved. Phones were still up, some recording, some crying. But no one had helped her. They'd seen everything. Sheriff Daniel Harper stepped out of his cruiser, boots heavy, hat tilted low. He looked at me, then at Jacob, still wrapped in his towel, and finally at Clara, moaning like a wounded animal in silk. He didn't draw his weapon, didn't raise his voice. He just walked past Clara like she was nothing. "What happened here?" he asked me. I held up a flash drive, calm as ever. Front porch security, Cam got it all, from the moment she came through the gate to the moment Brutus stopped. Sheriff Harper took it, then turned to the neighbors. "Any witnesses?" A dozen hands rose. Phones, cameras, silent nods. Clara croaked from the ground. "I was assaulted. I was just enforcing community safety. That animal, he's vicious." Harper didn't look at her. "Did you step onto his land?" he asked. Yes, but, and did you assault the child?" Clara tried to speak, but her mouth filled with blood. She turned her head and vomited into the dirt. Harper turned back to me. "Animal control's on the way, but off the record." He glanced at Brutus. I'd pull him on a badge before I'd put her back in charge of a neighborhood. I nodded. He knew where justice lay. The ambulance lights cut through the dusk, painting the oak trees in red and blue. Clara Hensley lay on the stretcher, her once pristine appearance reduced to a mess of mud, blood, and broken pride. Her leg was splinted, her arm twisted and purple, and she wailed as they lifted her, not just from pain, but from the humiliation of being seen like this. The neighbors watched, silent, their phones still recording. No one clapped, but no one looked away either. I stood by the porch, Jacob's hand in mine, his small fingers trembling but steady. He looked up at me, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, is Brutus going to be okay?" I glanced at the boar, slumped under the oak tree, his massive chest rising and falling like a bellows. His eyes were swollen, crusted with blood, but he was alive. "He'll be fine," I said, squeezing Jacob's hand. He did what he had to. Clara, through the ambulance's back window, glared at me with her one good eye, her face pale, but still burning with rage. Even now, broken and bleeding, she didn't think she deserved it. That's what made her dangerous. Not what she'd done, but what she'd do again if given the chance. Sheriff Harper handed me a stack of paperwork, his expression unreadable. "You'll need to sign these," he said. "Animal control's coming to check on the boar, but I don't expect trouble. The footage and witnesses tell a clear story." I nodded, taking the forms. The neighbors began to drift away, their phones finally lowering, but the weight of their silence lingered. They'd seen Clara pour slop on my son, blind my boar, and laugh while doing it. They'd seen Brutus deliver justice, and not one of them had lifted a finger to help her. As the ambulance drove off, its sirens fading into the Tennessee night, I sat beside Brutus, my hand resting on his coarse fur. He flinched at my touch, but didn't pull away. "You rest now," I whispered. "You brought balance back." For the first time in years, my land felt safe again. Not because Clara was gone, but because the line had been drawn and everyone knew what crossing it meant. 2 days later, a letter arrived, its crisp HOA letterhead a stark contrast to the chaos it followed. It wasn't a fine or a threat. It was a statement of removal. Clara Hensley, effective immediately, had been unanimously stripped of her title as HOA president. No hearing, no appeal. The security footage, the neighbors' live streams, the hospital reports, they'd left no room for her lies. She'd survived, but barely. A fractured hip for broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a torn ligament in her spine. But the real damage was what she couldn't hide. The entire neighborhood had seen her for what she was, a bully who'd used her power to hurt a child and an animal, thinking no one would stop her. The news spread like wildfire through Willow Creek. By the weekend, people started showing up at my gate, not to judge, but to make amends. Mrs. Carter, the old widow from across the street, brought a pecan pie and an envelope with cash for Brutus's vet bills. "I should have said something sooner," she admitted, her voice shaky. She had us all scared. A young couple from down the road brought flowers for Jacob, their toddler clinging to their legs. "He's a brave kid," the husband said, shaking my hand. Others came to see Brutus, still bandaged but recovering, and whispered, "He saved us all." I didn't want their praise. I didn't want their apologies. I just wanted peace. But the gestures kept coming. Pies, cards, even a hand-drawn picture from a neighbor's kid showing Brutus as a superhero with tusks like swords. Jacob taped it to the fridge, a small smile breaking through the dirt and trauma still clinging to him. He was healing, but slowly. The slop had washed off, but the memory of Clara's heel on his back lingered. I catch him staring at Brutus's pen, his eyes distant, like he was replaying it all. Sunday morning, I stood by the broken flagpole, its splintered base a testament to Brutus's fury. I didn't fix it. Instead, I dug a hole and planted a cedar cross. Not for religion, but for respect. Respect for Jacob, who never raised a hand. Respect for Brutus, who only struck when his home was threatened. Respect for the land that had held us through it all. Sheriff Harper stopped by as I worked, his cruiser kicking up dust in the morning light. He watched me pack the dirt around the cross, then spoke. Just so you know, no charges are being filed. The neighbors backed you up. So did the video. I nodded, wiping sweat from my brow. The day he shook my hand. He added, a rare grin tugging at his lips. Said he wishes more cases ended this clean. I didn't smile back. She's not gone, I said, my voice low. People like her don't disappear. They wait. Harper didn't disagree. He tipped his hat, glancing at Brutus, who lay under the oak, one eye still swollen but alert. If she comes back, tell your boy not to worry, he said. Looks like you got a sheriff in your yard. That night, Jacob left something by Brutus's pen, a hand-drawn sign taped to the gate. It read, private property, protected by one Boar, one dad, and zero mercy. I chuckled, ruffling his hair. You're tougher than you look, kid. He shrugged, but his eyes were brighter than they'd been in days. The sign wasn't just for show. It was a promise. We didn't need fences anymore. Not really. What happened here wasn't about land or rules. It was about knowing when a line's been crossed and having the guts to say, not here. The days that followed were quiet, but the kind of quiet that feels like the calm before a storm. The HOA sent a new representative, a nervous man in his 30s who stammered through an apology and promised to leave us alone. We're revising the bylaws, he said, avoiding my eyes. No more aggressive enforcement. I didn't trust him, but I nodded. Trust wasn't the point. Power was. And for now, the power was ours. Brutus's vet visits were expensive, but the neighbors' donations covered most of it. The vet, a gruff woman who'd seen her share of farm injuries, marveled at his resilience. That Boar's a fighter, she said, cleaning his eyes. He'll see again, but it'll take time. I thanked her, but my mind was elsewhere. Clara was still out there, recovering in a hospital bed, her rage festering. I knew her type. She wouldn't let this go, not because she was right, but because she couldn't stand to lose. Jacob started sleeping better, but he'd still wake up some nights, calling for me. I'd sit by his bed, telling him stories about my grandfather, about the land, about Brutus when he was just a piglet. He's not just a Boar, I'd say. He's proof that you don't have to be human to know what's worth fighting for. Jacob would nod, clutching his blanket, and drift back to sleep. But I didn't sleep much. I kept the porch light on, the security cam rolling, and my shotgun by the door. Just in case. The weeks following Clara Hensley's fall were deceptively calm in Willow Creek. The air carried the crisp bite of early fall, and the oak leaves turned a fiery red, as if the land itself was still smoldering from that day. My 5 acres felt like a fortress again, but I knew better than to trust the quiet. At 55, I'd learned that silence often hides sharper teeth than noise. Jacob was back to kicking his soccer ball in the yard, his laughter a fragile melody, but his eyes still darted to Brutus's pen now and then, like he was checking for ghosts. Brutus, bandaged but unbowed, was healing. His vision was returning, though one I remained clouded, a permanent scar from Clara's cruelty. I watched them both, my son and my Boar, and kept my guard up. The HOA had gone silent, their threats replaced by a nervous deference. The new representative, a man named Greg who sweated through his collared shirt, stopped by once more to assure me that the bylaws were being rewritten. We want to avoid misunderstandings, he said, glancing at Brutus's pen. I didn't respond. I didn't need their promises. The security cam footage, backed by a dozen neighbors' recordings, had done more than any letter ever could. Clara was gone from power, but I knew she wasn't gone from our lives. People like her don't vanish. they fester. Rumors trickled in from the neighborhood. Clara was out of the hospital, holed up in her McMansion at the end of Willow Creek Lane, her injuries keeping her bedridden, but her anger burning hot. Mrs. Carter, who'd brought the pecan pie, mentioned in passing that Clara had hired a lawyer. "She's telling anyone who'll listen that you're a menace," she said, her voice low. "Says she's going to sue you for everything you've got." I thanked her for the heads up, but didn't let it show how the news tightened my chest. A lawsuit wouldn't scare me, but Clara's vindictiveness might reach beyond the courtroom. I doubled down on security. I installed motion sensor lights along the fence and upgraded the cameras to catch every angle of the property. Jacob noticed, his brow furrowing. "Is she coming back, Dad?" he asked one night, his voice small. I knelt beside him, meeting his eyes. "If she does, she'll wish she hadn't," I said. "We've got Brutus, and we've got each other." He nodded, but the fear in his eyes didn't fade. I hated that Clara had put it there, that her shadow still lingered over my boy. Brutus, meanwhile, was regaining his strength. The vet warned that as clouded, I might never fully recover, but his spirit was unbroken. He'd stand by the gate of his pen, ears twitching, as if he could sense the tension in the air. I'd sit with him at dusk, my hand on his flank, and talk to him like I used to talk to my grandfather. "You showed her, didn't you?" I'd say. "You showed her what happens when you cross the wrong line." He'd snort, his breath warm against my arm, and I'd feel the weight of his loyalty like a shield. The neighborhood, too, was changing. The HOA's iron grip had loosened, and people started to breathe easier. At the local diner, I overheard folks talking about Clara's downfall with a mix of awe and unease. "That boar could have killed her," one man said, shaking his head. "But it didn't," his wife replied. "It knew exactly how far to go." They glanced at me, nodding respectfully, and I nodded back. I didn't want to be a hero or a villain. I just wanted to be left alone. But Clara wasn't done. A month after the incident, a certified letter arrived. Not from the HOA, but from a law firm in Nashville. It was a cease and desist order, accusing me of reckless endangerment and intentional infliction of harm by allowing Brutus to attack Clara. The letter demanded I surrender Brutus to animal control and pay $500,000 in damages or face a civil suit. I read it twice, my jaw tight, then set it on the kitchen table. Jacob saw it and froze. "They can't take him, can they?" he asked, his voice trembling. "They can try," I said, folding the letter. "But they won't. Why?" I called Sheriff Harper that evening, and he came by the next morning, his cruiser parked under the oaks. I handed him the letter. He skimmed it, his expression darkening. "This is a fishing expedition," he said. "She's got no case. The footage shows her trespassing, assaulting your boy, and attacking your animal. No judge in Tennessee is going to side with her." He paused, meeting my eyes. "But she's got money and a grudge. Be ready." I was ready. I hired a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Ellen who'd grown up on a farm and knew the value of land and loyalty. She reviewed the footage, the witness statements, and the hospital reports, then grinned. "This is a slam dunk," she said. "Clara's lucky she's not facing criminal charges for child endangerment and animal cruelty." She filed a countersuit, alleging trespass, assault, and emotional distress on Jacob's behalf. "Let's see how she likes playing defense," Ellen said, and I felt a flicker of hope. But hope is a fragile thing. One night, I woke to the sound of glass breaking. I grabbed my shotgun and crept to the porch, the motion sensor lights blazing. A brick lay in the yard, wrapped in a note. "You'll pay for what you did." The handwriting was shaky, but I knew who it belonged to. I called Harper, and he was there within the hour, bagging the brick as evidence. "She's desperate," he said, "but desperation makes people dangerous." He posted a deputy to patrol the neighborhood, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. The next morning, I found footprints near Brutus's pen, small, deliberate, like someone had been watching. I tightened the locks on the gate and told Jacob to stay close to the house. He didn't argue, but his silence worried me more than his questions. That evening, I sat him down. "You're safe," I said, "but if you see anything strange, you tell me right away." He nodded, then hugged me, his arms tighter than usual. I don't want her to hurt Brutus again, he whispered. I held him close. She won't, I said. Not while I'm here. The tension built like a storm cloud. Neighbors reported seeing Clara's car, a sleek black SUV, cruising slowly past my property. Mrs. Carter called one afternoon, her voice urgent. She was at the HOA meeting last night, she said. Not officially, but she was there, whispering to her old cronies. They're planning something. I thanked her and checked the cameras again. Nothing yet, but I could feel it coming. Then it happened. Late one Friday, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I heard Brutus snort, a low, warning sound I hadn't heard since that day. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the pen. The gate was ajar, the lock pried open. Brutus stood rigid, his ears pinned back, staring into the darkness beyond the fence. I swept the flashlight across the tree-line and caught a glint, metal moving fast. A figure darted into the woods, too quick to identify, but I knew it was her. I called Harper, and he arrived with two deputies, their flashlights cutting through the night. We found a can of gasoline and a book of matches near the pen, half hidden in the grass. She was gonna burn it, Harper said, his voice tight. Or worse. The deputies swept the woods, but found no one. Clara was gone, but her message was clear. She wasn't just after revenge. She wanted to destroy us. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch, shotgun across my lap, watching the shadows. Jacob slept inside, unaware of how close we'd come to disaster. Brutus stood guard in his pen, his clouded eye glinting in the moonlight. I whispered to him, my voice steady. We're not done yet, old boy, but we'll be ready. The land, the boy, the boar, we were one, and no one, not even Clara Hensley, would break us. The air in Willow Creek grew heavy as autumn deepened, the Tennessee hills cloaked in mist that clung to the ground like a warning. My 5 acres, once a sanctuary, felt like a battlefield waiting for its final clash. At 55, I'd seen enough of life to know that evil doesn't retreat, it doubles down. Clara Hensley, broken but unbowed, was coming for us. The gasoline can, the matches, the footprints near Brutus's pen, they weren't just threats. They were promises. And I was done waiting for her to strike. Jacob sensed it too. He'd stopped kicking his soccer ball in the yard, sticking close to the house instead, his eyes scanning the tree-line whenever he stepped outside. She's not going to stop, is she? He asked one morning, his voice steady but small. I knelt beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. She can try, I said, but we're stronger than her. You, me, Brutus, we don't break. He nodded, but the weight of her shadow was still there, dimming the light in his eyes. Brutus, meanwhile, was nearly back to his old self. His clouded eye gave him a fierce, battle-worn look, but his strength had returned, his ears twitching at every sound. He knew what was coming as well as I did. I fortified the property like a man preparing for war. New locks on every gate, reinforced fencing around Brutus's pen, and a second set of cameras with night vision. Sheriff Harper increased patrols, but he warned me that Clara's money and connections made her slippery. She's got friends in high places, he said, handing me a copy of her latest legal filing, a motion to seize my land as restitution for her injuries. My lawyer, Ellen, laughed when she saw it. This is desperation, she said. No court's going to touch this. But she's not playing by the rules anymore. Neither was I. The neighborhood was on edge. Mrs. Carter and a few others formed a quiet alliance, keeping me updated on Clara's movements. She's been meeting with some shady types, Mrs. Carter whispered over coffee one afternoon. Not lawyers, muscle. Be careful, Thomas. I thanked her, but being careful wasn't enough. I needed to end this. Clara had crossed too many lines, dumping slop on my son, blinding my boar, threatening to burn us out. She thought her wealth and her title made her untouchable. She was about to learn otherwise. It came on a Friday night, the sky black and starless, a storm brewing in the distance. I was on the porch, shotgun by my side, when the motion sensor lights blazed to life. Brutus snorted from his pen, a low, guttural sound that raised the hairs on my neck. I grabbed my flashlight and moved silently toward the fence, my boots soft on the damp grass. The cameras caught it first, a figure in dark clothing, slipping through the tree-line, a glint of metal in their hand. Not Clara, someone she'd hired. A professional. I call Harper, keeping my voice low. They're here, east side of the property. He was 10 minutes out, but 10 minutes was an eternity. I woke Jacob, ushering him to the basement with a flashlight and my old hunting knife. Stay quiet, I said. Don't come up until I call you. His eyes were wide, but he nodded, clutching the knife like a lifeline. I locked the basement door and returned to the porch, my heart steady, but my blood hot. Brutus was pacing in his pen, his tusks catching the light. I unlatched the gate, whispering, "Stay close." He stepped out, silent and massive, his breath steaming in the cool air. We moved together toward the tree-line, my flashlight off, relying on the faint glow of the motion lights. The figure was closer now, crouched near the compost bin, pouring something from a can. Gasoline again. I raised my shotgun, my voice cutting through the night. Drop it. Now. The man froze, then turned, his face half hidden by a ski mask. He was big, broad-shouldered, with a knife strapped to his belt. Walk away, old man, he growled. This doesn't have to get messy. I cocked the shotgun, the sound loud in the silence. You're on my land, I said. It's already messy. Brutus snorted, stepping forward, his hooves cracking twigs. The man's eyes flicked to the boar, and for the first time, I saw fear. He bolted, dropping the can and sprinting for the woods. Brutus didn't wait for my command. He charged, a blur of muscle and fury, cutting off the man's escape. The intruder stumbled, scrambling to draw his knife, but Brutus was faster. His tusks caught the man's leg, sending him crashing to the ground with a scream. I ran up, shotgun trained on him. Don't move, I said. Brutus stood over him, snorting, ready to finish it. The man raised his hands, blood seeping through his torn pants. She paid me, he gasped. Clara said to burn the pen, scare you out. Harper's cruiser screeched into the driveway, lights flashing. 2 deputies tackled the man, cuffing him as he groaned. Harper looked at me, then at Brutus, who'd returned to my side. You okay? He asked. I nodded, lowering the shotgun. Got it on camera, I said, pointing to the new night vision feed. Harper shook his head, almost smiling. You make my job too easy, Thomas. The man confessed everything in the back of the cruiser. Clara had hired him through a middleman, offering 10 grand to torch Brutus's pen and send a message. The evidence, his confession, the gasoline, the camera footage, was enough to issue a warrant for her arrest. Harper's team raided her house at dawn, finding her packed and ready to flee, a one-way ticket to Florida on her nightstand. She was charged with conspiracy, attempted arson, and witness intimidation. Her lawyer tried to spin it, but the case was airtight. Clara's trial was swift, a spectacle that drew every neighbor in Willow Creek. She sat in the courtroom, her injuries still visible, her face a mask of defiance. But the evidence was overwhelming. Jacob's testimony, quiet but unflinching, broke the room. She hurt me, he said, his voice clear. She hurt Brutus. She laughed. The jury didn't take long. Clara was convicted, sentenced to 5 years in prison, and ordered to pay restitution for Jacob's therapy and Brutus's vet bills. Her McMansion was sold to cover the costs, her HOA empire reduced to nothing. The day she was sentenced, I stood by the cedar cross, Jacob at my side, Brutus dozing under the oak. The land fell whole again, its scars fading like Brutus's clouded eye. Jacob looked up at me, his smile real for the first time in months. We won, didn't we? He asked. I ruffled his hair. Yeah, kid. We did. But it wasn't about winning. It was about protecting what mattered. Our home, our family, our way of life. Willow Creek changed after that. The HOA rewrote its rules, electing Mrs. Carter as president, a woman who valued people over power. Neighbors stopped hiding behind their fences, sharing coffee and stories like they used to. Brutus became a legend, his pen a pilgrimage site for kids who left apples and drawings at the gate. Jacob framed his sign, private property, protected by one boar, one dad, and zero mercy, and hung it in his room, a reminder of what we'd overcome. Clara's name faded, but her lesson didn't. She thought power came from titles and threats, but real power was in loyalty, in standing your ground, in knowing when to open a gate and when to close it. Brutus hadn't just fought for us. He'd fought for every family pushed too far, every home violated by cruelty. And he'd won. As I write this, I'm sitting on my porch, the Tennessee stars bright above. Jacob's asleep, dreaming of soccer and boars. Brutus is in his pen, and his snore's a steady rhythm. The land is quiet, but it's the kind of quiet that feels earned. Clara's gone, her schemes buried under the weight of justice. But if she ever comes back, or anyone like her, we'll be ready. Because on this land, we don't bend, we don't break, and we don't forget. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced someone like Clara? Someone who crossed the line and thought they'd get away with it? What did you do? Share your story in the comments and tell me, was Brutus's justice too far or just right? Where do you stand on violence when it's the only way to stop injustice? Let's talk. This isn't just a story. It's a conversation about what we protect and how far we'll go to do it. Hit that like button if this moved you, and subscribe for more stories of family, land, and the fights that define us. Stay grounded, stay sharp, and never let anyone mistake your silence for surrender.